Chapter 1. Saiyans, Descend on Fenris. The biting wind swept across Fenris. White ruled the world here, ice and snow in endless sheets, death an ordinary fact of life. A year on Fenris lasted as long as 40 months on Holy Terra. Only for a few brief months each cycle did the planet swing a little closer to its star, granting a rare, fleeting summer. A single-person ship streaked down from the sky, trailing a long plume of exhaust, and slammed into the glacier with an earth-shattering roar. The impact flattened the ice into an elliptical crater. When the smoke and spray of snow cleared, an eyeball-shaped pod lay half-buried in the hollow. Inside the pod's red hatch, a small human boy, no more than 5, with an odd hairstyle and a tail, slept deeply. More than 20 years earlier, a similar pod had fallen on Fenris, carrying a child who would become their wolf king. He had been raised by a she-wolf alongside 2 wolf brothers until humans found him and took him in. They named him Leman Russ, and he rose to rule this frozen world. The tribe's warriors hurried to the crash site and reported to their king without delay. When Leman Russ heard that a boy had arrived the same way he had, something like kinship stirred in him. He ordered his personal guard to bring the child and the ship to his hall. Inside the pod, the boy woke to the smell of damp fur and smoke. "What the? Where am I? Did I go off course?" Axis muttered as he blinked awake. Around him were rough, primitive figures with simple tempered iron weapons and sharpened wooden spears. Thick furs hung from their shoulders, and the animal stench hit him the instant the hatch opened. Not Earth. Definitely not Earth. Axis saw at a glance a backward, savage world. He hoped Frieza's forces hadn't found him, and that they couldn't trace his pod's signal. Logically, Frieza wouldn't be chasing Kakarot's ship this far, much less a 5-year-old. He had transmigrated into a Saiyan and narrowly escaped the catastrophe on Vegeta. He wasn't ready for another pursuit. He needed time, a decade at least, to train and become a Super Saiyan. Heavy footsteps shook the ground. A towering figure strode into view, roughly 3.6 meters tall, a carved, brutal face, 2 large canine teeth jutting from his mouth, long hair tumbling down his back. 2 enormous wolves padded at his heels. The sight of that man made Axis's stomach drop. Instinctive danger flashed through him. He didn't dare move. He fitted the scouter over his eye and activated it. Beep, beep, beep. The numbers flickered and stopped at 1666. Axis stared. 1666. He hadn't expected that. On a backwater world like this, a reading over 1,000 marked a king-level fighter. Axis's own reading was only 110, a low-class Saiyan warrior. This giant stood at least 1,500 points above him. If the man wanted him dead, Axis had no real way to resist. Even if he transformed into an Uzaru and multiplied his power tenfold, victory wasn't guaranteed. Best to play helpless and hope for mercy. The giant man stepped forward and wrenched the hatch off the pod with both hands. Axis's first thought was disbelief. Prying a ship's hatch open with bare hands was the kind of feat only someone vastly stronger could manage. He'd expected 1,000 more points than his scouter showed. Clearly, his estimations were off. The man spoke in a language Axis didn't understand. Axis tried the universal tongue, getting nothing but confused looks in return. The giant simply lifted the boy with both hands and held him aloft, displaying him to the surrounding tribe, while patting his own broad chest and shouting. The warriors raised their weapons and shouted back, words alien to Axis's ears. After a while, Axis found he could pick up the rough meaning. The giant, Leman Russ, announced that he had rescued the child and declared, in effect, "This one is my little wolf cub." Held in the grip of someone with a power level more than 1,500 points higher, Axis forced a brittle, childlike smile. He was 5 anyway, pretending came naturally. Cold wind cut through his thin clothing. Fenris's chill bit him to the bone. The people around him were huge by human standards, 2 meters or so, heavily muscled, but none of them matched the king. Their scouters, if they had them, would probably show only low double digits. They were powerful by the planet's standards, but not on the king's level. Axis glanced at his pod's broken hull and cursed silently. His ship held a few Saiyan combat suits, some stolen Saibaman seeds from his escape off Vegeta, and several scouters. If these barbarians damaged the gear, he had little hope of leaving. Repairing the pod on a world like this seemed unlikely. Leman Russ set the boy down beside a long table piled with food. He grinned and made an eating gesture, beckoning Axis to take some. For a starving Scion, the invitation was irresistible. Axis dove in. He grabbed a strip of roasted meat and stuffed it into his mouth, chewing and swallowing with one gluttonous motion. Then another, and another. He tore into cheeses, hard breads, smoked sausages, and thick bowls of meat stew as if he hadn't eaten in weeks. Saiyan appetites were legendary for a reason. Leman Russ watched with delight. The sight of the child devouring food made the king laugh. It recalled his own savage childhood, curled beside wolves and wolf brothers. The kid's arms and legs might have been small, but they were packed with power. Russ's gut told him this child was built to fight, perhaps even kin, somehow. The warriors around the table murmured and cheered. "My little wolf cub eats like a proper son of Fenris," Leman Russ boomed. "A boy who can eat so much will be a great warrior." "He might one day be as mighty as you, Great Wolf King," someone called. But their amusement soon blended into concern. In minutes, the child had swallowed the equivalent of 2 or 3 grown men's rations and showed no sign of stopping. "Russ, he's eating more than even you did at that age," one voice laughed. "Ha ha! He must have come from a harsh place. Bring more food. Let him eat his fill." Leman Russ ordered his men to fetch stored supplies. He was the Wolf King. A few storerooms emptied for a hungry child meant nothing to his pride. Axis kept eating, cheeks bulging, trying to appear helpless and grateful. Inside, he planned. Live with the king for a while, grow stronger in peace, and find a way off this frozen rock when the time was right. For now, his belly was full, the wolves at their sides, and the man who held dominion over Fenris called him his little wolf cub. Chapter 2. The Wolf King wants to compete with the Saiyans in eating. After Axis devoured more than a dozen helpings, the tribal soldiers finally showed true horror. "King, he eats so much. What if something happens to him? Where did it all go in that small body? What on earth was in his stomach?" Leman Russ only laughed. "It's fine. A healthy appetite is a good thing. I ate plenty at his age too," he said with a fond smile. The more he watched the long-tailed child, the more he found him endearing. "He ate even more than I did." Axis wiped his mouth, having polished off over 20 portions under the wide eyes of the Fenris warriors. He'd only just arrived on the planet and had deliberately restrained himself to about half full. Still, the local warriors stared as if he'd performed a miracle. This kid's appetite was even greater than the Wolf King's. Could he really be an illegitimate son from the heavens? They both looked like skyfallers. Axis offered the tall man in front of him a smug, contented grin. Eating so much, had he scared these people? Judging by their stunned faces, these warriors had never heard the Saiyan legends, which suited him fine. His race was infamous across the galaxy for war and appetite. Ignorance here was a blessing. He did wonder, though, whether the planet had any moons. Large satellites could trigger a great ape transformation in low-class Saiyans like him, and losing control would be disastrous. "Ha! Little wolf cub, are you satisfied?" Leman Russ came forward, trying to keep his voice gentle. Axis didn't understand all the words at first, but he nodded and patted his belly, which showed no sign of having been stretched. "I'm not full," he thought. "I could eat more, but I'll stop so I don't frighten him. Prepare a clean room for this child. Lay out the best furs, light the stove, and let him sleep well. Bring his ship into my room and place it with mine," Leman Russ declared, standing and nodding with satisfaction. Over the next months, the Wolf King kept Axis close, pointing out things around Fenris and teaching him words. Wild wolf, cold, food, warrior, the first 4 words every child on Fenris learned. Russ noticed many similarities between the boy and himself. Appetite, combat potential, the mysterious way they had both come to the world. But Axis's mind wasn't as quick as Russ had been. Whereas Russ had mastered human speech in a matter of days, Axis took months to form halting sentences. Still, he was sharper than ordinary children, and Russ expected him to improve with age. Axis had lived with his wolf mother until the day he was taken into human society. In the blink of an eye, a year passed. His life settled into a steady routine of eating, learning Fenris tongue, and sleeping. Over that year, his combat power rose by 50 points to 160, typical growth for a Saiyan child. He did only light daily training during this stage to avoid strain, but his power climbed steadily. By the end of the year, Axis could speak the local language fluently. He learned that his adoptive guardian was Leman Russ, the ruler of this frozen, barren world, the legendary Wolf King. Russ, for his part, had no knowledge of Galactic Emperor Frieza, the Evil Legion, or the Saiyan people. Fenris was truly backward by galactic standards, an outpost on the edge of the void with little worth invading. All the better for Axis, the environment was ideal for him to grow. He planned to stay here at least through his teens. "Ha ha! Little wolf cub, today I caught a giant mammoth. Want to see who can eat more?" Leman Russ asked one afternoon, grinning. Axis turned his head, rolled his eyes. "Are you sure you want to try and beat me? When have you ever won against me?" he said. Competing with a Saiyan in eating, bold move. Even the Galactic Emperor would think twice. "I starved myself for 3 days to prepare. This time I'll win. If I do, you'll have to call me father," Leman Russ boasted. Axis sighed inwardly. Does he think he's some kind of pirate captain? He hated being called Little Wolf Cub and being adopted everywhere. He wouldn't claim them as his blood. He might acknowledge someone as a master, but father? Still, he found the ritual amusing enough to accept. On Fenris, disputes where one party demanded obedience from another could be settled by 3 challenges: eating, drinking, and wrestling. If you beat the other in any of those contests, the loser had to obey. Facing a child, Russ couldn't in good conscience wrestle or drink, so he chose eating. The results were predictable. Since Axis had mastered the language half a year earlier, they began having eating contests every few days. Time after time, the Wolf King lost to the 6-year-old. Russ nursed a quiet grudge over being beaten by a child. "Humph, you brat! I've sent people to roast the meat. This time I'm going to make you call me father," Russ said stubbornly. "Then let's go." Axis clapped. "If you're looking for trouble, I'll give it to you. When my combat power's a bit higher, I'll use you as a training dummy," he thought. Soon the enormous mammoth had been roasted and set between them, steam rising and the scent filling the hall. The contest was about to begin. Chapter 3, Saiyan Ace Sparring Partner, Wolf King Leman. The mammoth towered over them, more than 10 meters long and roughly 7 meters tall. It would have taken hundreds of the tribe's hunters to finish it. For a Saiyan, though, it was nothing more than a feast. The tribal warriors circled the two of them and roared in excitement. Axis waved to the gathered crowd. "I'm sure the great Wolf King will win this time," one tribesman declared. "Don't underestimate Axis," another countered. "I've never seen a kid who eats like him." Anyone who'd watched Axis feed knew how terrifying he could be. Axis and Leman Russ approached the roasted mammoth. The meat gleamed with oil and a golden brown crust, enough to stimulate anyone's appetite. This planet teemed with giant beasts. Saiyans here would never lack food. "Let's make a bet," Axis said, eyes flicking to Leman Russ. "What kind of bet?" Leman Russ asked. "You always make me call you father if you lose, but when I win I get nothing. That's not fair. From now on, if you want to challenge me, you have to put something up, otherwise I won't accept," Axis said. Leman Russ laughed. "You're bold, little wolf cub. What would you have me wager?" Axis's pupils narrowed. "Starting tomorrow, be my sparring partner." Having a sparring partner would speed up Axis's growth. His adoptive father was an ideal candidate, strong, experienced, and trusted. He was 6 now, his bones had stabilized enough for basic combat training, and his combat power had risen 50 points over the past year. Leman Russ himself had climbed past 700, a high combat power mutant among the tribe. If they trained together, Axis could improve quickly. "No problem, I agree," Leman Russ said with a smile. He was curious to see how strong the kid had become and to compare him to his own youth. A tribesman shouted for them to begin. Leman Russ dove into the feast, shoveling roasted meat into his mouth with desperate hunger. He'd been fasting for 3 days and intended to make this meal count. But the surrounding warriors stared in disbelief as Axis leaped straight at the mammoth and opened his mouth like a vacuum. He wasn't politely eating, he was devouring. In a blink, he had stripped an entire leg bare and kept going, showing no sign of stopping. "Impossible," murmured one of the onlookers. "Is that even human?" Leman Russ scowled and forced more food down, barely chewing. He couldn't afford to be humiliated. But no matter how fast he ate, Axis was ravenous beyond reason. When the dust settled an hour later, Axis leaned back, patted his rounded belly, and sat contentedly amid the giant skeleton. Leman Russ had managed a leg and a basin of meat, but most of the feast had gone to Axis. Even after all that, Leman Russ felt only about 70% full. Axis looked unbothered, alert and satisfied. Pathetic. Looks like I won, Axis said, grinning as he squatted down before his adoptive father. Leman Russ spat out a piece of meat, took a few steadying breaths, and glared. You brat, just you wait. I'll beat you tomorrow, but a promise is a promise. I'll be your sparring partner. Axis's smile widened. Then it's settled. Rest up today. You don't look in great shape. Even walking seems hard for you. Leman Russ snarled in anger, but he couldn't hide the spark of interest. That kid was a monster. Tomorrow, he thought, I'll give you a proper lesson. At dawn, after Leman Russ had recovered, he led Axis to an ice plain he'd chosen as a training ground. How do we train? Axis asked, stretching and testing his jumps. The best way is to spar. You asked me to be your partner, so fight, Leman Russ replied, shrugging off his cloak and tossing it aside. Then I won't hold back. Axis's eyes sharpened like a predator's. He launched forward with the speed of a leopard. He crouched slightly, muscles coiled like a drawn bow. When his foot slammed the ice, it spidered with cracks. He shot forward like an arrow. Take this, Axis growled, whipping his right leg out. The kick sliced through the cold air with a fierce whoosh, aimed at Leman Russ's face. It was a lightning strike, a strike meant to tear even the air apart. Leman Russ remained calm. He simply raised his left hand, palm steady like an iron wall, and stopped the blow. The impact unleashed a visible shockwave. The ice splintered and shards flew, sending a sharp chill through the plane. Axis used the force to rebound and vaulted into the air, spinning and then bringing his leg down like a falling mountain. The attempted head strike crashed into Leman Russ's waiting palm, which held firm as if clamped in iron. Axis's kick struck a copper-clad barrier and produced no effect. Good speed, but not enough power, Leman Russ said with a faint smile, a trace of approval in his voice. Defiance flared in Axis's eyes. He landed and unleashed a storm of strikes, fists raining down with brutal force, each blow whistling through the air as if to tear it. Leman Russ met them with the same single-handed guard, his palm moving like an illusion as he deflected blow after blow without breaking his stance. Each collision sent dull concussions through the air and cracked more ice. Snow and shards scattered from the ground. Axis pressed harder, culminating in a sweeping kick that gouged a deep scar in the ice. Leman Russ hopped aside lightly, unshaken and as steady as a mountain. The gap between them was clear. Not bad, kid. That was a powerful kick, Leman Russ admitted, eyes showing real admiration. Axis panted, sweat beading on his brow, his fists tingling from exertion, but the fighting fire in his gaze only burned brighter. His cyan battle cells were awakening. He was exhilarated. Again, he roared and surged forward so fast his figure left an afterimage on the ice. The wind from his punches howled like a blade. Leman Russ remained composed, palm an immovable wall blocking every attack. Their clash whipped the plane into an icy maelstrom, ice shards and snowflakes swirling like an approaching storm. This was only the beginning. Chapter 4. The Wolf King encounters Ki for the first time. What is this power? Axis's breathing quickened, and a fierce heat lit his eyes. His cyan blood boiled, and every strike carried a wild, desperate force, as if he meant to tear his opponent apart. Leman Russ, however, remained calm. His movements were casual but flawless. He met each blow with an unshakable block, as if nothing could hurt him. Your attacks are too direct, no variation, Leman Russ said, easily stopping Axis's fist. His voice was calm but carried an undeniable authority. Axis grit his teeth, took a step back, lowered his stance, clenched his fists, and launched himself into the air. He spun rapidly, his legs a blur as he rained kicks toward Leman Russ's head and chest. Cyclone kick, he roared, an onslaught like a storm. A hint of approval passed through Leman Russ's eyes, but he didn't budge. His hands moved like shadows, catching every kick precisely. With each impact came dull thuds and the constant cracking of the ice beneath them, shards sprayed into the air. Not bad. This is getting interesting, Leman Russ said with a slight smile. Then, with a single sharp movement, he slapped Axis in the chest. Axis's pupils pinched shut. He crossed his arms instinctively to block, but the force still sent him skidding across the ice for dozens of meters before he barely stopped. His arms tingled and his chest ached, but he grinned. He'd misjudged his adoptive father. This man's awareness and experience were frightening. Again! Axis shouted and charged. This time he moved with more cunning. He abandoned sheer force for feints and deception. A punch aimed true suddenly became a sweeping kick to the ankle. Surprise flickered in Leman Russ's eyes, but he still avoided the blow with a light leap, tracing a graceful arc before landing steady. "Haha, my little wolf cub is improving, but not enough." Leman Russ laughed, then struck with a chopping hand to Axis's shoulder. A hot, sharp pain shot through Axis's shoulder. He staggered back, breath ragged. "Combat isn't just strength," Leman Russ said slowly. "It's skill and wisdom. Don't be careless. You have great power, but your style is one note. Watch your opponent. Vary your strategy." For all his age and dominance over his peers, Axis had much to learn in tactical fighting. Leman Russ had the rare gift of mimicking an opponent's moves after seeing them once, then improving on them and predicting the next steps, sometimes several moves ahead, all in a few seconds. After barely 10 minutes, he had already worked out Axis's entire pattern. Axis took a deep breath and nodded. He adjusted his breathing and readied himself. The duel resumed. Thuds of flesh and ice, the crack of frozen ground, the hiss of snow. Axis shifted between furious assaults, footwork, and feints, while Leman Russ countered with calm precision, guiding Axis to push past his limits. Snow and ice glittered around them as their figures flashed across the plain like twin lightning bolts. After a few exchanges, Leman Russ once more sent Axis sprawling to the ice. He shrugged and stretched his wrists. "I know your level now. Let's stop for today." Though their spar had lasted only tens of minutes, Leman Russ had learned how strong the boy was. No one in the tribe, aside from himself, could match this level. This kid had to come from somewhere strong, otherwise he wouldn't be this powerful. "Don't get cocky. I haven't even gone all out." Axis snarled, eyes aflame. A white light began to burn around him. On the planet where Axis had been sent as a low-level Saiyan warrior, he'd learned to gather a strange inner energy and shape it into a single, devastating strike. It was a technique from his old world, one he couldn't name to most people, but he knew the pose and the feel. He brought his hands together, palms facing, fingertips slightly cupped, lowering his body with feet planted on the cracking ice. White energy swirled around him, coalescing in his palms. "Kamehameha!" Axis shouted, voice full of confidence. The light exploded from his hands in a searing beam. Where it passed, the ice vaporized, sizzling and smoking. The air trembled with scorching intensity, as if even the space between them had been torn. Leman Russ's pupils narrowed. He'd never seen anything like it. The energy in that beam made something in him take notice, danger, but he did not panic. He retreated, carving 2 deep furrows in the ice, and crossed his arms to brace his chest, trying to withstand the blow with sheer physical might. The beam slammed into him with a thunderous impact. The ice beneath his feet shattered, and Leman Russ was blasted backward for dozens of meters. Snow and ice spun wildly in the air. He felt a stinging pain along his arms, and when he looked down, saw a charred mark on his skin. "What is this power?" he murmured, disbelief and concern in his voice. He had fought every monstrous threat on his world and had never once been wounded like this, certainly not by a child. Axis panted, sweat beading across his forehead. His arms trembled. That attack had drained him. He'd poured all his inner energy into it and felt utterly spent. "It's called ki," Axis said, a grin of pride cutting through his exhaustion. "Or sometimes they call it chi elsewhere. It's a kind of life energy. When I use it, my power can spike hundreds of times over." Leman Russ lowered his hands, studying the boy with a new intensity. He had never heard of ki, but the force of that strike demanded respect. If Axis had been even slightly stronger, he could have been gravely wounded, or worse. He inhaled slowly, steadying his breath. "Little wolf cub," he said, voice calm but charged with a keen interest, "teach me how to truly control this power. Tell me, what exactly is ki?" Leman Russ's curiosity was genuine and deep. Axis straightened, wiped sweat from his brow, and smiled despite his fatigue. "No problem," he said. "I'll teach you. Everyone has ki inside them." Chapter 5. Unable to learn ki. The power belongs to only one person. Axis and Leman Russ sat cross-legged on a vast snow-capped mountain, breathing evenly, hands on their knees, eyes closed. Axis was trying to guide Leman Russ to sense the ki inside him. Ki is the most fundamental energy in living beings. It's present in every cell. With practice, you can gradually detect and control it. Try to feel it carefully. You should be able to sense it, Axis said slowly. Leman Russ's combat power was as high as 1,700. With a little guidance from Axis, he ought to be able to master ki easily. All right, what exactly should I do? Leman Russ asked. You must first calm your mind, feel the flow inside your body, find the source of that energy, and then try to circulate it within you, Axis instructed. Leman Russ frowned and concentrated, doing his best to follow Axis's directions. He closed his eyes and tried to sense any change in his body. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't feel the ki Axis described. It was as if nothing of the sort existed inside him. Strange. Why couldn't he feel it at all? Leman Russ tried again, disbelieving, but still felt nothing. The ki Axis spoke of seemed not to exist for him. My little wolf cub, I can't feel the ki you're talking about. Your ki is as ethereal as air to me. I can't sense any of its power, Leman Russ said, opening his eyes. Axis opened his eyes and looked at him helplessly. This made no sense. From their earlier fight, Axis had already realized just how extraordinary the Wolf King was, an instinctive combat genius who resolved every move with near-perfect technique. That kind of talent wasn't explained by experience alone. On this planet, there was no one else who had sparred with him. Leman Russ was not only a mutant in combat power, but also a natural warrior. Someone like him should easily master ki with a little guidance. Vegeta, a fellow prodigy on Earth, had grasped ki after only a single battle with the Z-Fighters. There was no reason Leman Russ shouldn't do the same with Axis's help. Never mind, Leman Russ said, getting to his feet. There's no rush. Ki probably can't be mastered overnight. I'll practice with you from now on. You can teach me gradually. All right, no rush, Axis agreed. Over the following days, aside from eating and sleeping, Axis spent all his time on combat training with Leman Russ. After each sparring session, they would climb to the mountaintop, and Axis would attempt to teach Leman Russ how to perceive ki. But Leman Russ had no clue. He couldn't even sense that ki existed. Axis insisted it was an energy every living being possessed, but for Leman Russ, it simply wasn't there. The power seemed to be unique to Axis. Axis grew anxious and even tried flowing his own ki into Leman Russ's body to guide him, helping him comprehend the sensation. Strangely, Axis's ki would enter Leman Russ's body and be felt for a moment, but, like water without a source, it could not be sustained. Within a dozen seconds, the ki Axis had injected would dissipate completely. Leman Russ could clearly perceive that transient power, but he couldn't retain or master it. His body seemed to instinctively reject it. How could this be? Could people on this planet simply not learn ki? That conflicted with the Dragon Ball worldview. Any living being should possess ki. Still disbelieving, Axis ran another experiment. He picked tribal warriors whose combat power exceeded 10 and tried to teach them ki, guiding them with his own energy. The warriors studied earnestly and practiced hard. But just like Leman Russ, they could not grasp ki. For 6 months, no matter how Axis taught, and no matter how hard Leman Russ and the tribal warriors tried, they could not master ki. Eventually, everyone gave up. Give up, my little wolf cub. It seems this power is unique to you. No one else can learn it, Leman Russ said, patting Axis on the shoulder. He was now certain that ki belonged to Axis alone, as if it were an innate ability. It's really strange, Axis replied, rubbing his chin. Logically, ki should be present in all living beings. Even if we can't learn it, we haven't come away empty-handed. At least your combat power has increased a lot, Leman Russ said. Over the past 6 months, Axis's combat power had risen by 350 points, reaching a total of 500. Because he had practiced using ki constantly, he had learned to fly, and his control over ki became more proficient. It seems you won't be able to teach this to others in the short term, Russ. I think there's something odd about this planet itself, Axis said. After a year and a half on this frozen world, Axis had come to understand it better. It was a very strange place. Everywhere there were signs of previous colonization. When Axis learned to fly and sailed across the sky, he discovered remnants of clearly mechanical constructs, advanced machinery, and abandoned structures left to decay for many years. unmistakable evidence of an interstellar civilization. Even the way time was kept felt off. 1 year on this planet equaled more than 3 Earth years, over 40 months, yet people counted years using a 365-day standard and months of 30 days, an Earth calendar transplanted wholesale. Fenris carried too strong a flavor of Earth to be coincidental. Chapter 6. Shocking. Fenris is a Norse mythology theme park. This was very strange. Axis had 100 questions, but he didn't dare ask them all. There were clear traces of an interstellar civilization here, and many things about the world looked uncannily like Earth. Not the Earth of the Dragon Ball universe, but the Earth he had come from. When he watched the night sky on Fenris, Axis even recognized constellations he knew only from home: the Large Magellanic Cloud, the Small Magellanic Cloud, the Big Dipper. How could that be? Was this planet actually close to Earth? Its name, Fenris, was the name of the wolf from Norse myth. When Axis had escaped in his ship, he'd felt in a trance, as if he passed through some strange fold of space, then came out into a normal universe and crashed here. Was it possible he was no longer in the Dragon Ball universe at all? The people on Fenris could not learn to use ki, yet Axis could. There were too many echoes of his old world. Boldly, frighteningly, he began to suspect this planet had once been colonized by humans from Earth. The thought made his skin prickle. If it was true, did that mean he could go home, back to his real home, not the Dragon Ball Earth? "Russ, there's something I want to ask you. Can you help me?" Axis said. Some things had to be clarified. What exactly was this planet? "My little wolf cub, speak. Anything I can help you with, I will, because I am the king of Fenris." Leman Russ nodded. "Russ, can you find me any history of this planet? I want to understand Fenris's past." The best way to tell whether this world had ties to Earth was to learn its history. "The history of this planet? You mean the past? Why are you interested in the past? The past is gone." Leman Russ shrugged. Fenris was a harsh place. People here rarely cared for written history. They lived for the present and for survival, and they passed on survival skills, not chronicles. "I have something important to confirm." Axis tried to keep calm. If there had been a colony, who had colonized it? Earthlings or some other human-looking aliens? If this was still in the Dragon Ball universe and some alien species had colonized Fenris, would they return and call the Great King's evil legion? Axis needed to know. "There are no historical records on this planet," Russ said. "Our tribe doesn't record history either. We pass knowledge down by practice, not by writing. I have nothing written to show you. My little ship has a very advanced AI. We can go to those steel ruins and use my ship's computer to read whatever we can salvage," Axis said. "If there were no books, maybe surviving machines could tell the story." "You mean your ship can interface with those ancient machines?" Russ asked. "Yes, if the damage isn't too bad, I can pull data from them." "All right. When I return to the tribe, I'll have the warriors bring back whatever they can from the ruins." Russ agreed. Watching Axis take off into the sky, Russ looked, for the first time, envious. He rode back to the tribe on his giant wolf brother, but he wanted the freedom Axis had found in flight. Within 2 weeks, the tribe hauled dozens of ruined machines into Axis's dwelling. Most were corroded and useless, but after hours of tinkering, Axis found 3 computers that still retained some stored data. He linked them to his ship's AI and began the decryption. When the files unrolled on his screen, Axis felt his pulse quicken and his head swim. Human Tourism World Fenris, Norse Theme Park. Year 825, 25K records, Norse Mythology Theme Park. Modified planetary weather control. Planetary template, Fenris winter. 3 years of harsh winter, followed by 1 year of summer. Genetic engineering used to modify native organisms and introduce Earth life. Snow wolf genome modified to create Norse mythic giant wolves. Constructed the world serpent and other mythological fauna. Released into Fenris theme park to receive tourists from across the globe. Axis stared at the words in disbelief. If the files were genuine, Fenris had been deliberately terraformed and stocked as a themed tourist world, an Earth-built Norse mythology amusement park. They had changed the weather cycles, engineered creatures like giant wolves and a world serpent, even imported Earth organisms. He might truly be on a human colony world, maybe even one deliberately set up by people from his original Earth. How is this possible?" Axis muttered. A tumult of hope and fear twisted his chest. Home seemed suddenly much closer, and yet the implications were overwhelming. He ran to Leman Russ's reception hall, eager to tell him. When he burst through the doors, he found Russ already hosting a visitor. The man was shrouded in a dark cloak and towered even over Leman Russ. Axis's breath caught at the sight. "Russ, I have a major discovery. Have you ever heard of Earth?" Axis blurted out. Before Russ could answer, the stranger slowly lifted his head. Deep-set eyes glinted from the shadow beneath the hood. His voice was low and resonant, threaded with a strange nostalgia. "Earth," the man said. "What a nostalgic word. I mean, it's called Terra, Holy Terra." The name landed like a stone. Axis's heart sank. Terra? Holy Terra? The unfamiliar title filled him with unease. He realized with a cold clarity that he might have been pulled into a universe far more complex and far more dangerous than he had imagined. Chapter 7. This is Warhammer. Are Saiyans considered human? Axis felt dumbfounded. How had things escalated so quickly? One moment he'd crossed into the Dragon Ball world, the next he'd been dumped into the grim darkness of the Warhammer universe. He didn't have some top-tier system or a golden ticket, only Saiyan blood, a heritage some distant god had given him. Could someone please do him a favor and send him back? The Dragon Ball world wasn't so bad. Beautiful scenery, fun characters, and aside from a few early threats like the Great King, manageable problems. With Saiyan blood, steady training, and a Super Saiyan transformation, he could rule a corner of the universe so long as he stayed away from Earth's main plot lines. Even without becoming a Super Saiyan, pushing his power past 10,000 and dominating a planet or two wasn't out of the question. When Earth settled, he could secretly gather the Dragon Balls and wish for immortality. Then he could lie flat and be done with it. The Z-Warriors would handle the big threats. He'd be fine. But being sent into Warhammer, that was a whole different nightmare. He could have been sent to Marvel, or at least DC, where despite cosmic catastrophes there were powerful allies. Why him? Why Warhammer? Then it clicked. Fenris, Leman Russ, Axis should have realized sooner. The man who'd adopted him wasn't some radioactive native. He was a gene seed Primarch created by the Emperor of Mankind, Leman Russ, Primarch of the 6th Legion, the Space Wolves. This was a disaster, and the tall man sitting before them, taller even than Russ, who else could he be but the Emperor himself, gathering his Primarchs? "Axis, my little wolf cub, what's wrong? Why the questions about Earth? About this, Holy Terra fellow?" Russ asked. "I looked through some of the old data on that computer you brought back," Axis said. "I learned Fenris was once a human colony from Earth, so that means we're human, right?" In the Warhammer universe, humanity's enemies weren't called aliens, but Xenos. The Imperium's doctrine, rooted in the Imperial truth, was ruthlessly xenocidal. Discover a Xenos species, and the Imperium's response was extermination, often for millennia. Axis suddenly understood why it was absolutely necessary to appear human. His Saiyan biology wasn't far off, just an extra tail, a rounded skull, and no reproductive barrier with humans. Impersonating humans should be doable. From now on, he decided he was human. Thank the gods his Saiyan nature hadn't been exposed earlier. Given Huang Laohan's temperament, he'd probably be dead. Russ laughed, unaware of Axis's inner panic. "So we're all human. I thought everyone out here looked like us." "Well done, little wolf cub. You found something remarkable. Want a reward?" Axis forced a smile, slowing his breathing and adjusting his ki to keep his expression natural. His original tail had been cut off long ago. During another spar with Russ, Axis had unwittingly seen the moonlight projected from his small ship. Saiyan pods, to help young warriors conquer a planet quickly, often project artificial moonlight to trigger the Uzaru, the great ape transformation. Axis had transformed during that bout. His weakness as an Uzaru was the tail, and Russ had severed it, preventing Axis from annihilating Fenris. At the time, Axis's regular power was over 400. As an Uzaru, it shot past 4,000, enough to lay waste to a planet. The tail never grew back, and Axis was secretly relieved. Otherwise, the Imperium's treatment of pure humans and subhumans would have been even worse. "Russ, rewards can wait," Axis said quietly. "Are you entertaining a guest?" "Yes, he says he's come from very far away," Russ replied, pointing at the tall man standing before them. Axis felt a strange mix of awe and familiarity at the figure. "I was just chatting with him when you ran in." The Emperor looked Axis over with a single detached glance. Is this your adopted son? Strong young man. His body shows no radiation mutation. His skull is rounded. He is a pure human. Axis exhaled inwardly. The Emperor's casual assessment was a miracle. To the Imperial eye, gene seed Primarchs were essentially a separate order of life, unable to breed with ordinary humans, so this boy had to be an adopted child, potentially a candidate for Astartes modification. The younger, the better for successful transformation. Indeed, Russ said, beaming, patting Axis's head. He's my little wolf cub. He's been well on Fenris. The Emperor's voice shifted, carrying the weight of authority that silenced even the wind. I am your father, your true father, and the Lord of mankind. Kneel before me and swear your loyalty. A ripple of incredulous laughter burst from the gathered warriors. Russ's companions snorted. Ha ha ha! This man expects the great Wolf King to kneel? Someone scoffed. Even with the Emperor's staggering presence, the idea of Leman Russ bowing before anyone struck them as absurd. Chapter 8. Emperor of Mankind. 3 games. What's so funny? I am the Human Emperor. You may call me that, or you may call me Father, the Human Emperor said calmly, his voice carrying an unmistakable authority. Leman Russ, the Wolf King, lounged on his throne with a mocking smirk. He looked at the man who claimed to be his father, the Lord of Mankind, the Human Emperor, and laughed. That's rich. I'm the king here, and you expect me to kneel? You expect me to call you my father? My father is dead. Before he passed, he named me tribal chief, and I led our warriors to conquer this world. I am the Wolf King of this planet. You mistake his role. He was your adoptive father, much like the child standing before me, the Human Emperor replied, his calm voice weighted with meaning. I am your biological father. You are my gene seed offspring. My blood flows in you. Leman Russ barked a derisive laugh. So what? Am I supposed to break down and kneel before you, call you daddy, and have you wrap me in a hug, crying my son? That won't be necessary, the Human Emperor said. But I am about to launch a great crusade to save humanity. It will last hundreds, perhaps thousands of years. I need you to join it. You were born for this. Ha ha ha! The Human Emperor wants my help? Take a hike. Leman Russ waved a hand dismissively. He had everything he wanted. His wolf brothers, daily sparring with the little wolf cub, hunting with the tribe's warriors. He'd carved out a life he loved and had no desire to spend it as someone's subordinate in a crusade across the stars. I regret to tell you the choice is not yours. Once the Great Crusade has done its work, you may return here and live as you please. But only after humanity has been saved, the Emperor replied, unyielding. Before Russ could respond, the Emperor swept his cloak aside to reveal magnificent golden armor. The man's stature grew taller and more imposing than he had appeared in plain robes. An immense psychic pressure washed outward. The force of it fell upon every person present and sent them to their knees. Every one except Leman Russ and Axis. The Emperor's eyes lingered on Axis with a spark of interest. This child's body is astonishingly strong. The psychic pressure he exerted would have crushed an ordinary Astartes, yet this child stood before him. Axis, for his part, was barely holding on. His mind swam. He tasted the edge of unconsciousness. Gritting his teeth, he channeled the chi in his body until it filled him, anchoring him to the world. Cold sweat slicked his brow. Somewhere deep within, something like a great ape roared, a furious, primeval force that blasted back the Human Emperor's psychic pressure. What are you doing? If you want to fight, I will fight to the end, Leman Russ growled, planting himself in front of Axis like a living torch. He felt the golden-armored man's power like a crushing weight that could fell him in an instant. I only rendered them unable to move. I did not harm them, the Human Emperor said, nodding toward the kneeling tribe. But your adopted son has impressed me. I admit, I underestimated him. He did not detect the telltale ripples of psychic talent in Axis. He was not a psyker. That absence reassured the Emperor. Psychic power was potent but dangerous, easily warped by chaos. Raw physical strength of this magnitude was rare. Besides finding a son, he might have found something unexpected. We Fenrisians have a way of settling disputes, Leman Russ said, his tone sharpening with challenge. When neither side yields, we set 3 trials. If you beat me, I will heed you. If I beat you, you must leave. You propose a contest? Very well. In what will we compete? the Emperor asked with a slight smile. Russ grinned. In the three things we Fenrisians love most: eating, drinking, and wrestling. Drinking was his forte. Perhaps only the little wolf cub might one day surpass him. Eating, well, the little wolf cub was a prodigy at that. Fighting he had confidence in. Months of sparring had not only sharpened the cub, but honed Russ himself. The Emperor's smile deepened. He agreed. The kneeling tribesmen recovered and immediately went about preparing. Soon mountains of food were set before the two. The first trial was obvious. Leman Russ devoured food like a beast. The Emperor, dignified and measured, ate less than a third of what Russ did. Leman Russ roared with triumph after the first victory. The stranger wasn't as invincible as he had imagined. For the second trial, the tribe rolled out great barrels of mead. The Emperor sat, calmly lifted a cup, smiled at Axis, and drank. Russ, arms wrapped around a barrel, poured mead into his own mouth in a reckless torrent. By the time the Emperor had finished 2 cups, Russ had emptied 3 barrels. "Ha ha! Looks like I've won this round," Russ crowed, flinging the last barrel aside, already celebrating. "Russ, don't get cocky," Axis blurted, unable to help himself. "Seriously, in a moment you'll be smashed so hard you'll be calling him Daddy. I wonder how strong the human Emperor would be if you translated his power into the Dragon Ball world." Russ laughed and swayed, clearly drunk. "Relax, little wolf cub. This stranger is nothing special. I think you could beat him. Why don't you take my place for the third trial?" Axis went pale. "Me? Fight the human Emperor? Are you kidding me?" Chapter 9, Axis vs. Emperor, Part 1. Axis's heart dropped when he heard Leman Russ's words. He swore silently. "Are you serious? You want me to fight the strongest human in history, the Emperor?" The man before them had not yet been enthroned on the Golden Throne, nor had he become the God Emperor who would one day wound Nurgle himself. Even so, he was already the most formidable human being Axis had ever heard of. Everything tied to the Emperor's name was monumental. The most famous story told of him sealing a fragment of a star god, the Void Dragon, on Mars, an event placed in the legends as far back as the 5th or 6th century AD. Later, during the Zidane campaign, the Emperor allegedly dragged the Void Dragon out from the Labyrinth of Eternal Night, annihilated the Raiden, and turned the tide in the war between the Imperium of Man and the Raiden. Those campaigns had not yet occurred in Axis's present, yet even fragments of those tales made the Emperor's might unmistakable. What kind of being was the Void Dragon? The thing had ripped through Necron dynasties and destroyed worlds like they were grains of dust. Whole stars could be snuffed out by its will. That the Emperor had defeated it in single combat placed his power well beyond normal human reckoning, something on a scale Axis could only compare to myths and stories, to impossible levels like Frieza from some other universe. If Axis could transform into a Super Saiyan, maybe he could hope to stand a chance. Right now, he was nothing but a little wolf cub. How could he possibly face such a man? The Emperor smiled faintly, amusement threading his tone. "Oh, you want your adopted son to take the third round against me? Are you certain you want to stake your wager on this child?" Leman Russ only laughed. "Ha! Stranger, don't underestimate Axis, or you'll find yourself regretting it. When I was his age, I wasn't as strong as he is. My little wolf cub's combat ability is fierce. In our whole tribe, except for me, he's the strongest." The Emperor's expression shifted. He studied Axis closer, a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. Leman Russ had just claimed this child was stronger than a gene seed Primarch of the same age. The Emperor knew, intimately, what gene seed Primarchs were capable of. He had sacrificed, bargained, and plundered secrets from the warp to fashion those demigods, titanic human warriors whose youth already outmatched the strongest of regular space marines. A 7-year-old gene seed Primarch stood over 2 meters tall, possessed strength that dwarfed an original space marine, and could contest even the custodes. If Axis truly exceeded that at the same age, it was an anomaly worth investigating. "If you say so," the Emperor said finally. "I am intrigued. I will take this contest." "Ha! Did you hear that, little wolf cub? He agreed to fight you. Come on, let's go where we always spar." Leman Russ clapped Axis on the shoulder. Axis gave a hollow smile. His fate had already been put on display. The Emperor had noticed him. If he had to fight, then so be it. They walked out to the frozen plain where Axis and Leman Russ usually trained. The wasteland was scarred, mountains split, the ground gouged and uneven, the remains of countless fierce clashes etched into the ice and rock. These were not minor skirmishes. The devastation testified to immense power unleashed here before. The Emperor frowned, a trace of surprise in his eyes. Interesting, he thought. Could such a fearsome child be a natural-born human? Leman Russ stood aside with folded arms, smiling. Let one thing be clear. You're welcome to face my little wolf cub, only to qualify for a bout with me. If you win, you'll still have to fight me. The Emperor inclined his head. I understand. I want to see what this child can do. Axis took a steadying breath and stepped forward. He set his stance, eyes locked on the Emperor. Do your best. If you make me take even one step back, you win. I promise I won't let you be harmed in this match. The Emperor's hands folded behind his back as he considered the boy. Axis nodded. The Saiyan battle blood that ran in him surged. He summoned every ounce of ki. He blurred forward like an afterimage, arriving in the Emperor's space in an instant and thrusting a punch at the man's chest. The blow never connected. The instant before his fist reached the Emperor, Axis slammed into an invisible barrier that stopped him as surely as a wall. The force threw him backwards. He careened and was about to hit the frozen ground when another unseen hand caught him and steadied him, preventing injury. What is this? Axis managed, breathless. The Emperor regarded him without hurry. This is called psychic power. It can be used in many ways, affecting cold, fire, lightning, forming telekinetic grips to snatch or crush objects at a distance. It can fashion an invisible wall to guard oneself, or an unseen hand to catch another. It is a weapon and a shield. Axis stared, tasting the strange foreign truth in the Emperor's words. He had met strange powers before, but never like this, calm, precise, and wielded with absolute confidence. The battlefield hummed with the aftershocks of his blocked strike as the two figures faced one another, the frozen plain holding its breath for the next move. The Emperor's psychic power rocked both Leman Russ and Axis. Psychers bind their souls to the warp and channel its energy into the material universe. That channeling is psychic power. In the Warhammer setting, it is the single most overwhelming force, immune to ordinary physical laws, a supernatural art with near-limitless applications. A powerful psyker can foresee events, enslave the wills of whole populations, read minds, rewrite memories, reverse time in a limited area, conjure duplicates, and wield a vast arsenal of phenomena beyond mundane comprehension. Axis gritted his teeth. A Saiyan didn't yield so easily. He drew in his ki and concentrated it into his fist, launching himself at the golden-armored figure like a cannonball. His punch tore the air with a sharp whistle. Ha! He roared as he swung with everything he had. The Emperor simply raised one hand, palm outward. A blast of psychic force flared, and an invisible barrier snapped into being. Axis's fist stopped less than an inch from that palm and could not move forward another fraction, no matter how hard he pushed. The Emperor stood perfectly still, a faint smile on his lips. A good attack, he said, but far from enough. Axis spun in midair and snapped out a sidekick toward the Emperor's head, but the same invisible force held. He threw every technique he knew, attacking from every angle, and each strike met the same implacable defense. Your strength is indeed great, the Emperor said calmly, but before my psychic power, it is still insufficient. Though his voice was composed, the Emperor's look had altered. He saw a ferocity, a single-minded lust for battle in the child's eyes that marked a born warrior. A typical 7-year-old, even a gene seed Primarch, would break after such a rebuke. This boy only wanted to fight harder. A crushing pressure rolled over Axis from all sides, threatening to compress him into nothing. He bit his lip and fought the restraint, but the psychic bonds held fast. Is this the Emperor's power? Axis thought, shaken. He had known the Emperor was strong, but not like this. His own Saiyan strength felt brittle against such a force. And yet the overwhelming gap thrilled him. Only an insurmountable peak could stir a Saiyan's blood. I must surpass you. One day I will beat you. Axis, use your ki. Show him what ki can do. Leman Russ shouted. Axis let out a roar. A crimson-white aura bloomed around him. His Saiyan lineage pushed through his limits, and his combat power spiked. The Emperor, watching the ki ripple outward, could not hide his curiosity. This was not psychic power, yet it also did not belong to mundane physics. Interesting. powers in this universe he did not know of. Axis flew upward, spread his hands, and shaped an invisible white energy between his palms. Kikoho, he bellowed, pouring every ounce of himself into a single cataclysmic blast. A massive white wave hurtled at the Emperor. A golden field threw up around the Emperor and absorbed the strike. Axis's strongest ki wave failed to breach the psychic barrier. From the start of the exchange until the end, the Emperor's feet had not shifted an inch. Exhausted, Axis fell from the sky. The Emperor used his power to form a colossal invisible hand, catching Axis as he dropped and lowering him gently to the ice. "I will not let him be hurt," the Emperor said softly, "not a scratch." He retracted the restraint and announced, "The match ends here. Child, I have seen how strong your power is." The pressure vanished. Axis collapsed to the ground, breath coming in ragged pulls. Leman Russ's smile faded. He strode over and patted the young Saiyan's shoulder. "Are you all right, little wolf cub?" Axis forced a smile and shook his head. "I'm fine, Russ. He's just too strong, impossibly strong." Russ looked up at the Emperor with a complex expression. The Emperor had fought entirely defensively. He'd barely shown all he could do, and still had been untroubled. "You are far stronger than I," Russ admitted aloud. Then, after a beat, he asked, "Would you like to rest a while?" The Emperor waved the offer off. "Not necessary. My reserves are ample. Come at me when you are ready." Russ laughed, the sound booming across the frozen waste. "Very well. Since you say so, I won't hold back." Axis watched, worry creasing his face. "Be careful, Russ. If you can't win, surrender." Russ bared his fangs in a wolfish grin, muscles coiling like a beast about to strike. "Little wolf cub," he replied, "watch as I avenge you." With that fierce intent flashing in his eyes, the two prepared to clash, Leman Russ's pride and battle lust meeting the Emperor's unshakable power. The next fierce duel was about to erupt. Chapter 11, Leman Russ versus the Emperor. The Emperor watched Leman Russ with a small, satisfied nod. "Come at me. Use your strongest power," he invited. "Oh, whoa!" Leman Russ answered with a wolfish howl, stamped the ice, and shattered it beneath his feet. He charged like a fired cannon, covering the ground in the blink of an eye. His massive fist, whistling through the air, aimed straight for the Emperor's chest, a blow with mountain-shattering force. The Emperor, smiling faintly, remained standing. He lifted a single hand and stopped the strike as if it were nothing. This time, the Emperor did not call on his psychic might. He chose to fight Leman Russ at close quarters. It was a curious father and son test. Fenris loved hand-to-hand combat, and a victory bought by sorcery would not satisfy him. The Emperor wanted to prove that his strength was not only psychic. "My son," he thought, "I am not merely strong in psychic power. In close combat, I am the strongest of men." Interesting. Again. Leman Russ roared and twisted his body into a driving sidekick aimed at the Emperor's head. The blow tore the air and exploded with a piercing boom, yet the Emperor merely raised his hand and blocked it with the same effortless grace, as though playing with a purposeful, raging beast. Then the Emperor's fists fell, rapid, precise, a torrential rain of strikes across Leman Russ's face. The earlier scuffle with Axis had been a playful trial with a child. This was no indulgence. This was a proper test of a matured gene seed Primarch. Leman Russ could not follow the trajectory of the attacks at all. He absorbed blow after blow, unable to find space to answer. He became, for all intent and purpose, a huge sandbag smitten by a volley of iron fists. The impact left him bruised and swelling. "Is that your strength?" the Emperor teased lightly. "Too weak, Russ? Have you had a little too much? Your punches aren't even as strong as that youngster's a moment ago." The words did not anger Leman Russ. They inflamed him. He stepped back, clenched his fists, and let his muscles swell. A faint silver sheen crawled over his skin as his wolf blood fully rose. His fangs grew longer, claws sprouted along his fingers, and his eyes turned to a feral, blood-red glare. He had never let himself become like this in training, complete, savage release of the wolf within. The Emperor watched and gave a slight nod. When he had shaped the 6th gene seed Primarch, he had discreetly woven in canine traits, a chimerang of wolf genes. Leman Russ's teeth could bite through auramite armor. Even the teeth of his gene seed offspring could tear through alloys and ceramite. "Ha! That's more like it. Again, show me what you've got, stranger." Leman Russ laughed, fully unleashed. He charged anew, fists and feet raining like a storm, each strike carrying enough force to topple mountains. The two wolf brothers who had grown up beside him echoed his howls and pressed forward, eager to aid their lord and brother. Leman Russ waved them back. This was his duel. No one else would step in. He became a blur, faster, heavier, leaving afterimages as he struck. Golden fists met claws, and the air itself was torn by their collision. Still, no matter the ferocity, the Emperor stood calm, one hand behind him, the other intercepting every attack. Where Russ hit, the Emperor absorbed. Where Russ sought to land something decisive, the Emperor simply remained unshaken, like a mountain. Leman Russ fought like a storm incarnate, fangs flashing, bloodlust in his eyes, howl after howl. The Emperor answered with iron. His blows fell like hammers upon Russ's chest, shoulders, and abdomen, each strike blunt, unavoidable, making Leman Russ's bones feel as if they would splinter. He reeled. Even in his lupine apogee, even with speed and strength pushed to their zenith, Russ found himself outmatched. He would retreat, gather himself, surge again. For an hour it went on. With each exchange, Leman Russ was forced deeper into reliance on sheer will. His form blurred into motion without technique, a brutal, unthinking barrage of fists that grew lighter for want of strength. At last his will thinned, and the Emperor shook his head as if pitying a child. A single sweeping kick sent Leman Russ sprawling onto the hard ice. He lay there, breath ragged, unable to rise. He could barely blink. The Wolf King had been bested, utterly, completely broken by the man who claimed his father. The two wolf brothers skulked to his side, whining softly, then raised fierce, low growls at the Emperor. "Do you surrender, my son?" the Emperor asked, looking down at him. From the ice, Leman Russ managed a raspy laugh. "Heh, you are stronger than me. You win." He paused, the ferocity gone, replaced by a fierce, grudging respect. "As we agreed, I will join you on the Great Crusade and swear my loyalty to you, Father. I believe you will grow even stronger. You are a combat-oriented gene seed Primarch," the Emperor said. Each of the 21 gene seed Primarchs he had made carried a corresponding role. Some were natural leaders, some handled internal affairs, some focused on development, some on the librarius, some specialized in psychic matters, and some were engineered for combat. Leman Russ, the Emperor explained, had been given canine traits and would one day serve as an executioner. "Is that so? So I have brothers," Leman Russ said, sitting up. "Which number am I?" "You are the 6th gene seed Primarch I found. You are number 6. "Not bad," Russ grinned. "Then there will be many brothers. Am I the only one who disappeared out there?" "You were the 2nd gene seed Primarch I found," the Emperor answered. "The first was Horus. He became the gene seed Primarch of the 16th Legion." A brief note about Alfarius: he later claimed he had never left Holy Terra and had been secretly raised and cultivated by the Emperor. That is his claim. Official history recognizes Horus as the first one found. I can't wait to meet him. He commands the 16th Legion, right? "Do I have a legion of my own?" Russ asked. "Yes. For each of you I used your genes to create Astartes legions. The Astartes are superhuman warriors produced from the gene seed taken from the 20 gene seed Primarchs. Each Astartes is a genetic derivative of his Primarch. Their foundation comes from your gene seed. Thus, every Astartes of the 6th Legion will be your genetic offspring. You will be the gene father of them all. After implantation and 19 superhuman organ augmentations, they possess strength far beyond ordinary mortals, extraordinary longevity, and combat abilities beyond imagination. They will be the main force of the Great Crusade. When you return, you will command your own 6th Legion." The Emperor's description of the Astartes was proud and precise. Though they could not match the raw strength of the Thunder Warriors, they were more stable, safer, efficient, and easier to mass-produce. "You said you made 21 Primarchs. Why only 20 legions?" Russ asked, puzzled. "That is an Imperial secret you need not probe. What you must know is that when you return, you will command a legion. You can recruit from the warriors of your tribe. They can undergo the Astartes procedures and be transformed into Space Marines." The Emperor did not reveal the full method of creating the gene seed Primarchs. That knowledge was confined to the highest levels, Lord High Counselor Micardo and himself. Not even the Primarchs were told. "So my tribe's warriors can all become Astartes?" Russ asked. The thought of immense power and near immortality appealed to any mortal. Yes, the younger candidates have the highest success rates. Adolescents in puberty are ideal. This is the best time for the procedures, the Emperor said. And the adult warriors who have followed me all their lives? Russ pressed. For adults, I devised a special augmentation plan with a 100% success rate. It is a reduced, safer variant, not as powerful as the full Astartes, but reliable. You may also choose to attempt the full transformation for adults. Though the success rate is lower, it's a gamble, the Emperor explained. Russ thought for a moment, then asked, "One last thing. How do these Astartes compare to that kid?" He pointed at Axis. Axis rolled his eyes. Don't underestimate science, he thought. He wasn't disparaging the Astartes, only that, once he reached maturity, he could level a city with his bare hands. Could an Astartes do that without weapons? He might even be able to destroy a planet. The only real attraction the Astartes held for Axis was their longevity. Scions lived longer than baseline humans, but nowhere near the span of an Astartes. Still, could the gene seed overwrite or dilute his Scion bloodline? That heritage was his trump card in a ruthless universe. He could not abandon it lightly. Unarmed, an Astartes is far inferior to Axis, the Emperor said. With weapons, of course, they are a different story. "Haha, did you hear that?" Russ crowed, feeling vindicated. "Axis, you'll become my true gene son." He looked at the boy with the smug pride of a wolf with a pup, possessive, certain. The Emperor, however, cut through the fantasy. "No, this child will not become your gene offspring. He will not be made an Astartes. I have other plans for him." "He is my little wolf cub," Russ protested, clearly displeased. "Because I am stronger than you, and because you have just sworn fealty and pledged to obey me," the Emperor said, words that left Russ momentarily speechless. Axis stepped forward. "Then, Emperor, what are your plans for me?" Chapter 13, Personalized Enhancement, Custodian Guard. "Child, your strength is immense. Even the gene seed Primarchs I created did not possess your power in their infancy. Your existence fills me with wonder. You might not comprehend how powerful the Primarchs are, but I can tell you this. They represent the pinnacle of humanity. They are the strongest of mankind in every aspect, yet you can rival or even surpass them in combat power. That is truly remarkable," the Emperor said, crouching before Axis. "Thank you for the compliment," Axis replied. He did not deny it. Scions might lack in many things, but in raw combat power they were top tier. Still, beyond that one metric he could not compare to the Primarchs. Even natural aging was different. Lionel Johnson, the eldest Primarch, would only show gray hair after 10,000 years, and Vulcan, the Lord of Drakes, could theoretically be reborn so long as his soul remained intact. Each Primarch was unique because their components came from fragments of lesser gods in the warp, perfect masterpieces of the Emperor. Therefore, I plan to give you a personalized gene enhancement surgery. Without damaging your existing genes, I will perform a comprehensive bespoke augmentation, the Emperor stated. Axis's current combat power rivaled that of a Primarch his age, perhaps even exceeded it. If he reached full maturity, his potential would be limitless, and his genes were unusual. With a brief observation, the Emperor had detected anomalies. Simply implanting a standard gene seed and turning the boy into a mass-produced Astartes would not suit him. It would destroy his future adaptability and sharply reduce his effectiveness. His inherent genetic strength far exceeded a typical Astartes. He needed a custom-tailored enhancement. "The Custodian Guard are your future," the Emperor decided. "I have high hopes for you. I will make you a Custodian Guard." You may not understand what that means, so let me be clear. Besides myself and the Primarchs, the Custodian Guard are the strongest in the Imperium, without exception. Every Custodian Guard's augmentation is completely custom-made. Astartes were mass-produced soldiers. In the Emperor's eyes, the ideal human form was the Custodian Guard. He estimated that if Axis reached adulthood, his combat power would match a Primarch's. With Custodian modification, it would skyrocket. In time, this Custodian Guard could even stand above Primarchs. The Emperor did not intend to make Axis a mere Custodian Guard or a captain. He intended to train him as Valdor's successor, the next Captain General of the Adeptus Custodes. His gaze on Axis was fervent. He saw a future Supreme Commander, a Custodian whose power might eclipse a Primarch. Holy cow, Axis thought, no fate with the Astartes after all. I'm being enhanced as a Custodian Guard. They are top tier in the war archives. Custodian augmentation doesn't import other genes, it refines one's own. Saiyan genes are strong, enhancing them would unleash Axis's potential. In terms of lifespan alone, Custodian Guard far outlived Space Marines. This was an enormous gain. Becoming a Custodian Guard suited him perfectly. Are the Custodian Guards so much stronger than the Space Marines? Then why not mass-produce Custodian Guard? Leman Russ asked, stroking his chin. If Custodian Guard were that formidable, why not make more of them? They are my most perfect masterpieces, the Emperor explained. Also known as the Legio Custodes, they are the Imperium's strongest fighting force. Each Custodian is worth the cost of thousands of Space Marines. Reaching even a few thousands is already the limit. They cannot be mass-produced like the Astartes. Each Custodian Guard was trained from youth, and the cost of their personalized augmentations and lifelong training far exceeded anything spent on Space Marines. Their armors alone were beyond comparison. A Custodian's suit was not forged from ceramite or adamantium. It was crafted from auramite, an even more formidable metal, inert at the quantum level and highly resistant to psychic and other energies. Their weapons and armor were made of the same alloy. The value of a single suit of Custodian armor could equal that of an entire world. I see. So Custodian Guard are ridiculously expensive, Russ said. The Custodes truly were more perfect than Astartes. Little wolf cub or not, Axis would benefit most from Custodian augmentation. There's simply no comparison, the Emperor continued. Go and consolidate your tribe. I'll prepare a few transport ships for you. My flagship will remain in orbit above your planet. Come see me when you're ready. I've also prepared a Gloriana-class battleship to serve as your flagship. To the Emperor, the Custodian Guard were his pride. The Astartes were a weakened, mass-produced continuation of the Thunder Warriors. Comparing the two was an insult. Astartes could never match the Custodian Guard's combat skill and strategic mastery. The Astartes' only advantage was their mass production. By then, Leman Russ had recovered, rose from the ground, bowed once to the Emperor, and left with Axis. His two wolf brothers followed closely behind. Russ, Axis said as they departed, even after I undergo the Custodian Guard modification, I will still recognize you as my adoptive father. Once I finish my Custodian training and augmentation, I will return to join you in the Great Crusade. The battlefield was a Saiyan's true home. Even as a Custodian Guard, Axis did not intend to spend his life at the Emperor's side or sequestered on Holy Terra. He would return to fight. Chapter 14. The Value of the Saiyan Spaceship. Ha ha! I knew it, little wolf cub. You're still with me. That bastard won't take you from me. Leman Russ crowed, pleased. The little one he'd raised for nearly 2 years had stayed loyal. His old man might want to claim his little wolf cub, but not while Russ had a say. Of course. I crave the battlefield. You just heard about the Custodes. Their duties are to serve the Emperor or guard the palace on Holy Terra. That's not for me, Axis replied. In truth, the Custodes ran covert missions and fought in secret, but their organization was rigid. Axis might want customized augmentations, but he didn't want to be stuck as a palace guard. How could staying on Holy Terra ever be as free as staying with the old wolf? Staying with Russ was the safer choice. We'll need to be careful. My father is stubborn. He won't easily let you go. He values you highly, Leman Russ said. He hadn't expected that his first task after returning would be outwitting his own sire. But under no circumstances would he let Axis go. That was non-negotiable. Convincing the Emperor to approve Custodes' modifications while letting Axis remain at Russ's side would be difficult, though. Don't worry, I have a plan, Axis said with a grin. Remember the ship I brought with me? He had something the Emperor would crave, something irresistible. The Emperor's desire for it would outweigh almost anything, perhaps even a Primarch. For a single customized Custodes surgery, Axis was certain the Emperor would agree. What do you have, kid? Is your escape pod that valuable? Russ asked. That's not an escape pod. It's a real spaceship, a vessel capable of real space hyperspace engine travel across the galaxy. Don't mistake it, Axis corrected. Saiyan ships, though small and elegant, were genuine hyperspace engine ships. In the Warhammer galaxy, the Emperor knew better than anyone what that meant. Even during the Dark Age of technology, humanity's primary method was warp travel. Real space hyperspace engine travel was extraordinarily rare. In the Imperium, only two known races managed hyperspace engine travel in real space. The Necrons, most of whom slumbered now, had ships that bypassed the warp entirely, and the Tyranids from beyond the galaxy moved in hive fleets without using the warp. All other races relied on warp passages. Even the Old One's webway was carved from the seam between the warp and reality, theoretically still connected to the warp, but far safer and faster. The Emperor had secretly excavated a webway on Holy Terra, intending to link it to the Eldari webway, freeing humanity from the warp's dangers. So a ship capable of hyperspace engine travel would be of immeasurable value to him. What exactly does hyperspace engine travel mean? Russ asked. Raised on Fenris, he knew little of the dangers of space. Think of it as a way to travel between planets without the hazards of the warp. My ship's design is highly advanced. It only carries one person, but it has a hyperspace engine. It consumes dark matter energy from the universe. In effect, if the engine can be replicated, it might not need conventional fuel. As long as it's in space, it can keep running, Axis explained. Scion craft were that impressive. Designed by beings at a cosmic scale, they were standard issue for Frieza's Legion. Axis's small ship came loaded with advanced alien tech. The Scion battlesuits were deceptively thin, lighter than ordinary clothes, yet their defensive properties were terrifying and remarkably elastic. Its construction used materials that, apparently, could be replicated on Earth. Bulma had managed it. If Bulma could duplicate them, then Mars tech priests might as well. And even if the tech priests failed, the Emperor himself was no slouch in science and engineering. So your plan is to give the whole ship to my father? Russ asked. Could such a ship really sway the Emperor? Not all at once, Axis said. We'll lure him in piece by piece. We don't reveal the hyperspace engine right away. There are plenty of other tantalizing things aboard that will catch his interest. My ship has an extremely powerful battle suit, several unique energy weapons, and power-level scouters. Those will whet his appetite. We can't hand everything over at once, understand? When he escaped from Vegeta, Axis had stolen several items, Cyberman seed pods, medical pods from the Great King's Legion, and more. The hyperspace engine was the crown jewel, but there was only one, and he didn't know whether humanity's current technology could reproduce it. Ha! Got it, Leman Russ said, eyes gleaming. Together they returned to the tribe and began dismantling the ship. They would first extract a few choice items to tempt the Emperor, then, step by step, make the Emperor comply willingly. Axis hauled everything off the ship and began a thorough inventory. First were several energy guns issued to low-ranking soldiers. The elite fighters in the Frieza Force scorned them, but that didn't make them useless. They were energy beam weapons, capable of directly blasting opponents with combat power over 100. They were certainly more potent than a bolter or melt-a-gun, though whether they could match a Necron Gauss flare was uncertain. Axis intended to give one of these to the Emperor for inspection. These weapons should be the easiest to reproduce, considered low-grade Legion hardware, widely circulated, and not technically restricted. There were also several Saiyan battlesuits. Their defensive capability was startling, far exceeding a Space Marine's power armor. When Raditz first arrived on Earth, he wore one and shrugged off Piccolo's attack of over 300 points without a scratch. The suit effectively resisted damage under 1,000 points. Axis even had Leman Russ don a suit to test it. Key attacks at his full strength couldn't harm Leman Russ while he wore it. Despite how imposing a Space Marine's armor looked, Axis was now convinced it was overrated. In the era of the Great Crusade, it had been almost ordinary civilian gear. For humans, though, a Saiyan battlesuit was priceless. If a Space Marine slipped one of these suits under his power armor, his survivability would skyrocket. Axis also found a combat power scanner. Worn over the eye, it could measure power levels accurately, but had limits. If an opponent concealed their energy, the scanner could be fooled. The unit Axis had was an older model, only able to read up to 22,000. Anything stronger was unrateable, and forcing it beyond its limit would cause it to fail catastrophically. Still, the device could be upgraded. The calculations were a numerical problem, not a fundamental one, and Axis was certain the Emperor's technicians could improve it. Integrated into a Space Marine's visor, a refined version would be invaluable. These items were standard issue on Scion infant ships, handed out to every low-class warrior leaving Vegeta. Those ships also contained an artificial moon projector, allowing Scions to become great apes even on planets without a natural satellite. The ships had life support systems capable of sustaining even badly wounded occupants. Vegeta himself had limped back to Frieza's base relying on one. During long voyages, they could put occupants into hibernation. Axis remembered being sent to an alien world as a child. At 4 years old, he completed his mission there, tearing through primitive creatures and a population whose highest fighters barely reached 50 in combat power. Transformed into a great ape, the mission had been trivial. When Axis returned to Vegeta and confirmed the timeline, he began planning his escape and stole several pieces of Vegeta's black tech before leaving. The most coveted item was a password-locked capsule box, an object of the same space compression tech as Capsule Corporation's capsules on Earth. It could store massive items inside a tiny container. The box was labeled as King Vegeta's personal property, likely a collection of valuables hoarded by the old king. Axis didn't leave it behind, but it was sealed behind an unknown password. He couldn't open it now without risking destroying whatever lay inside, so he hid the box and planned to wait until he grew up and could find high-tech experts to crack it properly. He'd also lifted cultivator seeds and culture fluid. Cultivators were strange life forms Saiyans discovered on a conquered planet, plant and animal hybrids that hatched in a minute once planted. Their combat power depended on soil quality. The best soil produced cultivators over 1,200 points, enough to rival low-class Saiyan warriors, while poorer soil yielded weaker specimens. Because they were fierce and only obeyed the strong, cultivators were reserved for already powerful fighters. Giving them to someone too weak could lead to betrayal. Axis had also taken the cultivation methods, but those required a large lab and significant tech investment. Until he broke 5,000 in combat power, attempting to grow them would be reckless. The creatures probably wouldn't obey him. Besides, the Emperor wouldn't appreciate alien beasts in his court, so cultivators were not something Axis intended to hand over. Finally, Axis stored several special medical pods in capsules. These tanks were crucial. Son Goku had survived and become a Super Saiyan thanks to that kind of treatment. As long as you weren't dead, hours in one of those pods could heal you completely, even regenerate lost limbs. That made them priceless. Axis weighed what to present to the Emperor first. The energy gun was easy to reproduce. The battle suits were game-changing for human defenders. The scanner could be upgraded and fitted to visors, and the medical pods were life-saving. The password box promised unknown riches, but required patience and expertise. The cultivators were powerful, but troublesome and impractical for now. With the haul inventoried and stowed, Axis made his choice and prepared the items for delivery. After thinking it over, Axis decided to give the Emperor the energy gun, the power-level scanner, and the protective suit. He would use those 3 items as his bargaining chip to secure the chance to become a custodian guard and to follow the Wolf King, Leman Russ. He hid the rest, the password box, the capsules, and the hyperspace ship, then stepped out of his house. Leman Russ had already gathered his warriors. "Warriors of Fenris," he roared, "we will join a great war. I have reunited with my father, the Lord of Mankind, the Emperor. All of you will have the chance to become my true sons, my wolf cubs. I will lead you from victory to victory." The Fenrisian warriors raised their weapons and howled their assent. Axis watched the display and shook his head. The success rate for turning men into space marines must be extremely low. If it were higher, there wouldn't be just a few million Astartes, there would be tens or hundreds of millions, and the Imperial army would be unnecessary. He wondered how many Fenrisian warriors would survive the gene seed surgeries. Under Russ's command, a large number of elderly and the strongest young fighters were deliberately left behind to guard the tribe and cooperate with Imperial reinforcements. A new fortress would be built on Fenris. The planet would be a recruitment world for the Primarch Leman Russ and the home of the 6th Legion. In the coming Great Crusade, it would supply weapons, equipment, and fresh recruits. "Axis, are you ready?" Leman Russ walked over. "Russ, I've chosen. These 3 items, Axis said, and described the energy gun, the power level scanner, and the protective suit in detail. I know them, Russ smiled. You used them when we fought. You even gave me one of those suits, good gear. He ran a hand over the material. The suit's defensive capability had impressed him, so tough that even a Fenrisian bite, which could tear steel, couldn't penetrate it. Russ kept his as inner armor. It was light, comfortable, and unlike any local leathers. Russ took the power level scanner. When we sparred a dozen days ago, this thing read my level at nearly 1800 and yours over 500, he said. Among the tribe, most warriors only registered in the low teens, ordinary women 6 to 8, children below 5. Only Russ himself reached above 1,000. Axis had been the only other one to break 100. Check my level again, Axis said. His Saiyan blood had surged since his fight with the Emperor. He felt stronger. The Saiyan nature was a combat engine, grow through fighting, learning, training, and never truly capped. Russ fitted the scanner to his eye and pressed the activation. The device beeped and a line of red numbers flashed. Axis saw the new reading, 756, a jump of roughly 200 points from before. Your power's climbing fast, Russ said, impressed. How about me? I felt stronger after we fought. Russ scanned himself. You're over 1860 now. In a year or two, you could break 2,000, Axis estimated. The whole power level system was imperfect. The scanner measured raw physical combat power, strength, speed, durability, very well in a world familiar with Kai users like those from Legends, where energy projection multiplies a warrior's destructive potential. Here, without those same energy abilities, those numerical comparisons meant different things. A high number in this setting signified tremendous physical prowess, breaking mountains rather than destroying worlds. The scanner also had limits. It could not fully account for the advantage of powered weapons and armor. An ordinary human with a power sword, if he landed a blow, could theoretically kill even a custodian if the geometry and timing were right. Armor, ranged weapons like plasma guns or melta-guns, and artificial augmentations could skew the practical outcome beyond what a raw physical readout suggested. You should bring the ship too, Russ said, stroking his chin. I don't think this is as simple as handing over 3 items. My father is unyielding. A hyperspace ship? Axis hesitated. He'd planned to keep the hyperspace engine until after the custodian procedure. Russ crouched, eyes distant. Trust my intuition, Axis. My head's been buzzing. I have a premonition. If you go to the Emperor without that ship, he won't accept the bargain. You might even anger him, and angering him has consequences I do not want us to see. He paused, as if watching something only he could see. I saw a glimpse. It wasn't clear, but it was enough. Axis stared. Russ's expression was serious enough to be unsettling. A strong intuition, almost like a psychic glimpse of the future. The Fenrisian Primarch had always been sharp, but this felt different. A sudden certainty about an event yet to come. Chapter 17. The Protection of the Wolf King. The Fighting Power of Astartes. Powerful psychers can foresee dangers to come, steering themselves away from threats and toward the most advantageous futures. 10,000 years from now, in the grim darkness of the 40K era, Mephiston, the chief librarian of the Blood Angels, would possess such precognition that he could foresee assaults by chaos and even tyrannid swarms, down to precise numbers. In a battle that strained belief, he was able to call both his future and past selves into the fray at once, forming a trinity. With raw psychic power, he could crush the skulls of half a planet's orcs, combat feats that dwarfed even the custodes. Psychic power, when it can be used, is a battlefield multiplier beyond measure, often greater even than ki. But such power is dangerous. Magnus, the greatest human psyker beneath the Emperor, capable of replacing him on the Golden Throne, had seen it all before the Battle of Prospero. Even before Leman Russ arrived, Magnus had premonitions. Some of his librarians felt it too, but they were cut down by their gene father. The Primarch's gene seeds all showed varying degrees of prescience, glimpses and warnings. The Archangel, for example, directly foresaw his own death. Russ, you saw something, didn't you? A psychic premonition? Axis asked. That's right, Leman Russ admitted. I saw something that startled me. My father, the Emperor, is a man who hates deceit. Whatever this is, it matters to him. My mind was urgently warning me while you were inside choosing things, but I can't say whether it's the kind of psychic sense you described." He shook his head. Raised by wolves, Leman Russ's warning instincts had saved him more than once. He'd had that aching premonition when his wolf mother died, and again, days before the Emperor came. Once or twice could be coincidence. Repeated patterns were not. "Then I understand, Russ. Besides one locked box, we'll take everything else from this ship," Axis said finally, deciding to trust the Wolf Lord. Opposing the Emperor's judgment with petty tricks was unwise. Axis had lived a normal life before transmigration and had neither the breadth of experience nor the Emperor's lifetimes of insight. It was better to be frank and earnest than to attempt cleverness that might offend the ruler of humanity. "Axis, there's something you must remember. From this day forward, you are a native child of Fenris," Leman Russ said, crouching to meet him eye to eye. "I've ordered a gag on the warriors who know your true origin. Your wrecked ship was found by me in a ruin. You didn't bring it here. I will be the one to claim it from the Emperor. You must not speak up. Understand?" From the vision Russ had seen, many things pointed to danger. He intended to protect his little wolf cub, and this matter had to be negotiated by him alone. Axis, still a child in this world, nodded and fell in with the Wolf King's decision. While they spoke, a dozen enormous Imperial landing craft thundered down near the tribe, huge iron beasts whose arrival sent the feral population into a restless stir. When the hatches opened, a squad of Space Marines emerged, towering men of war in powered armor, standing roughly 2.2 meters tall, the twin-headed Imperial Aquila blazoned on their chests. They were Astartes, gene-forged warriors. A bannered squad approached Leman Russ and knelt, one knee to the ground. "Hail, great Gene Father. I am your son by gene seed, of the 6th Legion. Welcome back," the kneeling Marine intoned, voice steady but edged with restrained joy. The return of their Gene Father was an event that filled the Legion with renewed purpose. Even his mere presence would stiffen their morale and sharpen their combat prowess. "It's unexpected to find so many sons at once," Leman Russ said with a small smile. "But since I'm back, I will lead you well, for all humanity." Axis fitted the combat power reader to his eye out of curiosity. The device beeped and gave a string of readings. He wanted to know just what the Space Marines' raw power looked like. A base value of 65 appeared, more than 10 times an ordinary man. Axis scanned other Marines. Most ranged between 65 and 80, with the highest reading around 93. Those numbers made sense as physical metrics. A Space Marine out of his armor could still punch with roughly a ton of force. But raw points didn't tell the whole story. Astartes' bodies are the product of 19 engineered organs and countless augmentations. Their reaction times are astonishing. Ordinary Marines operate in milliseconds. Some individuals can act in nanoseconds. With 2 hearts, a secondary lung, and the Ansu membrane that allows suspended animation, their survivability is far greater than a normal human's. Slap on powered armor that integrates servos and ceramite plating, and combine that with bolters, plasma, meltas, power swords, and chain swords, and their battlefield value multiplies. In a Dragon Ball scale, Axis thought their overall combat capability would be comparable to a power level around 200 without using any ki. Some of the 6th Legion Marines watched the small device on Axis's face with mild curiosity. "How are they, my little wolf cub?" Leman Russ asked with a hint of pride. "How are my son's combat powers?" "Their physical metrics are between 65 and 100, Axis replied. "This is just raw physical data." Chapter 18. Combat power less than 100? You're not even as good as my little wolf cub. Even reaching this level with pure physical strength was impressive. Stronger than the base stats of some races in the Dragon Ball world, but compared to Saiyans, it was still far from enough. How strong were Saiyan bodies? When Nappa first showed up on Earth with a power level of 4,000, he dominated everything. He smashed through planes, tanks, and ships with his bare body and took Chiaotzu's self-destruct without so much as a scratch. Saiyans were a warrior race for a reason. They could transform into great apes and were born with prodigious power. In raw physical terms, they were among the best. At the same measured power, a Saiyan could crush opponents with sheer brute strength. And if the opponent's power level was higher, well, The great ape transformation was always an ace up their sleeve. Still not even 100. I thought these Astartes were supposed to be amazing. Leman Russ sounded a little disappointed when he heard the reading. He'd expected soldiers the Emperor was so proud of to register at least 500 or 600. It turned out they were better than the warriors of his own tribe, but only by a little. They still couldn't match Axis, that boy. It's already very good. Their physical potential is at least 10 times that of ordinary humans. Axis said. Ordinary humans averaged a power level of 5. That's for a strong adult male. When young Goku first appeared, his reading was barely into the teens. After Master Roshi's basic training, it triggered his Saiyan bloodline, and he crept over 100. Which warrior in our tribe has a power level under 10? If they haven't even broken 100, how can you claim they're 10 times stronger than ordinary people? Leman Russ asked. If they were truly 10 times stronger, he expected readings closer to the 100-200 range. Calling it 10 times felt underwhelming. Axis rolled his eyes. Do you even hear yourself? You're comparing ordinary Fenrisians to ordinary people across other Imperial worlds. People on Fenris have a physical quality 2 to 3 times a standard outsider's. Since outsiders average a base of 5, by strict numbers, Fenrisian base attributes are over 12 times that of regular humans and can be higher, he explained. But still, they can't beat you. That's true, they can't beat me, Leman Russ said, smiling. The great Genefather, have we disappointed you? The 6th Legion's Astartes standing by were stunned. They'd come to meet their Genefather, and now he was saying their power levels weren't even up to a child's. Worse, the child admitted it. The readings, a single Astartes at 93, did not sit well. The Astartes clustered closer, muttering indignantly. The environment was harsh. Fenris produced formidable warriors, and yet to be told they were inferior to a boy who looked 7 years old stung. The leading captain of the 6th Legion stepped forward, proud and offended. Do not misunderstand, Genefather. We Astartes are the pride of the Lord of mankind. We are the Emperor's angels of death, the strongest demigod warriors of humanity. We are your gene seed offspring, he said. He was the one whose reading had registered 93. He was the strongest among them, a veteran of the Emperor's wars to unify Holy Terra and one of the earliest of the Astartes. I'm telling the truth. You are indeed no match for Axis. He is my most excellent little wolf cub, Leman Russ replied. But worry not. I will train you well and make you stronger. By Fenris standards, every man in the Legion should be over 100. That was supposed to be encouraging. In his mind, it was a pep talk. Look, even together you can't beat Axis, so double your training. The joke landed very differently with the 6th Legion. They felt wounded. The great Genefather speaking like that, were they truly so disappointing? If they denied it by stepping up to fight the boy and lost, their disgrace would be immense. If they won, it would be an even stranger humiliation. You may board the ship, child of my gene seed, one of the captains said, turning his hard gaze to Axis. In the future, we will take care of him. Once he is officially an Astartes, allow us to witness his terrifying strength. The 6th Legion's men looked at Axis with guarded intent. They weren't going to attack a 7-year-old now, but he was linked to the Wolf King and would one day undergo the gene surgery that made Astartes. When that day came, they planned to make him earn his place and teach him the old ways. Ha! If you're so eager, I can let young Axis spar with you right now, Leman Russ said, amusement clear in his voice. A little demonstration would do them good. Come, Russ, don't keep the Emperor waiting. We still have gifts to bring him. Axis put a hand between them, forcing the mood to shift. You Space Marines over there, come help carry some things. Please, you old trickster, Axis thought wildly. Don't make me the object of their scorn. I'm not even 7 years old, and you're handing me a target. But outwardly, he managed only a thin smile as they moved toward the ship, the towering Astartes falling in behind them. Chapter 19, The Combat Effectiveness of the Imperial Guards, is mainly due to Horus. What an uncooperative adult. The men of the 6th Legion had foolishly expected to turn these Fenrisian youths into gene seed scions of Leman Russ and into space marines like themselves. Brothers, get it straight. My future is with the Custodes. Leman Russ chuckled at Axis. The boy already knew to fear trouble. Didn't you say you were born to fight? He teased. If that's true, you'll have plenty of opportunities in the future. The 6th Legion nodded and followed their Primarch's orders. They loaded Axis's small, eye-shaped ship into a transport. Other tribal warriors clambered into the Emperor-arranged transports, while Mechanicum personnel began a large-scale landing on Fenris to start modern construction. Their chief task was to build a massive Space Marine monastery that would serve as the 6th Legion's base and contain the facilities to turn Fenrisian recruits into Astartes. The landing craft roared into Fenris's skies and slowly climbed. Axis, who had recently mastered Skydance and taken to flying, had never climbed higher than a few thousand meters, never reached 10,000. Now, the planet spread beneath him, a pristine sphere of white. Fenris was still beautiful. After more than 10 minutes, the transports reached orbit and hovered over the surface, beside the Emperor's flagship, the great crusade vessel of the Lord of Mankind. It was a Glory Queen-class battleship, larger than normal by about 50%. Battle barges, destroyers, cruisers, and frigates ringed it in numbers. On board the Emperor's flagship, the Fenrisian warriors were gathered by the Mechanicus tech priests for physical examinations. These men were to be the first wave of new Astartes, implanted with the Wolf King's gene seed. The tribal warriors, who had never seen so much technology, looked about like curious children. "Don't gawk," a tech priest barked. "Come with us. You will undergo surgical modification for the Space Marines. If you pass, the transformation will take 5 to 6 years." To the tech priests, Fenrisian society seemed utterly primitive, no better than the medieval era. Leman Russ stepped forward. "Warriors of the tribe, do not let them look down on you," he said. "Go through the process. I hope each of you becomes my gene seed offspring." "Roar for the Wolf King! We will become your sons!" the tribe cried, beating their chests and filing after the tech priests. Most of the recruits Russ had brought were under 20, some barely into puberty. Young bodies increased the likelihood of successful conversion. Russ had still not used his guaranteed 100% success Astartes surgical conversions reserved for 10 adult recruits. He had kept those in reserve. "Please follow us. The great Primarchs and the Emperor await you," a 6th Legion Space Marine said with a gesture. Leman Russ nodded, taking Axis by the hand, and followed the Legion Marines into the ship. They entered a vast hall at the center of the flagship. Atop a high throne sat the Lord of Mankind, flanked by his personal guards. Towering figures around 3.2 meters tall, clad in gleaming golden armor and wielding power halberds. These were the Emperor's custodes. Wherever the Emperor appeared, they stood as an implacable presence. Axis pressed his combat power scanner against one of the custodes out of curiosity. A faint series of beeps sounded. The custodes noticed, but did not react to a child's curiosity. This boy had been brought by Leman Russ, and the Emperor had already spoken of recruiting a new member of the Custodes here. The readings came back: 1,123, 1,168, 1,112, 113. Axis tested 4 Custodes in succession. Each registered a combat rating well over 1,000, physical strength at least an order of magnitude beyond a standard Space Marine. Their value was undeniable. Beside the Emperor stood a bald man, roughly 4 meters tall, clad in pure white power armor, his face severe and commanding. The Emperor smiled and turned to Leman Russ. "You have returned, Russ. Allow me to introduce your brother, Horus, the Primarch of the 16 Legion, the Luna Wolves. He is the first Primarch I found." Horus was the Emperor's favored son, the one groomed as his successor. In both martial ability and command talent, he had proven himself and earned his father's pride. Axis looked at the towering figure with the same curiosity he had shown the Custodes. This was the son the Emperor loved most, the one who would, in time, sit at his right hand. Russ greeted him warmly. "Ha! Hello, brother." Horus could not quite bring himself to meet the barbarian Primarch's gaze openly. The idea of another son rivaling his place at the Emperor's side was uncomfortable. Still, he forced a smile and inclined his head. "Hello, brother," he replied. The Emperor observed the exchange with quiet patience. Horus, the first son he'd found, and the one who had long held his affection, might feel uneasy at Russ's return and the prospect of another favored Primarch. The Emperor believed, however, that Horus would adapt. His firstborn had never disappointed him. "Russ," the Emperor said, Before your return, your legion had a numeric designation. As Primarchs rejoin their sons, you will each be able to give your legions names. For instance, Horus's legion will be called the Luna Wolves. What will you name yours? Russ thought for a moment, then grinned. Father, my legion will be called the Space Wolves. It will be linked to wolves as well. Originally, he had wanted to call them the Wolves of Fenris, a name that would honor both his home and himself. But he foresaw fighting in the void, and Leman Russ decided Space Wolves suited them better. Russ noticed, with a sharp eye, that one brother at the court seemed to bear him some ill will. That was no problem. By Fenris tradition, the matter could be settled with a fight. Among Fenrisians, brothers sparred now and then. It was a friendly ritual that deepened bonds. After he sorted the matter of the little wolf cub, Russ planned to have his bout with this man. I understand. From today, the 6th Legion is officially renamed the Space Wolves, the Emperor said, nodding. The tech priests of Mars and the Imperial administrators immediately began drafting the decree to send to every legion and every world under the Emperor's rule. The Empire's 2nd Gene Seed Primarch had returned, Leman Russ, patron of the 6th. Greetings, my father. Russ boomed. My son. I will prepare a feast worthy of welcoming you into the great family of the Imperium. From now on, you will fight for mankind, for the Empire, and for me, the Emperor replied. Father, I found many useful things on Fenris, and I thought they might serve you, Russ said, indicating the small, eyeball-shaped craft parked behind him. The Emperor had noticed the odd vessel when it came into the hangar. At first, he assumed it was a mere trinket his Primarch had brought. He had not expected it to be presented as a gift. Horus, standing near, allowed himself a faint, amused smile. The little craft looked no larger than an escape pod, far smaller than an Imperial landing barge. That Russ prized it so highly only confirmed what everyone suspected. He was a barbarian of a primitive world, likely never having seen the grander vessels of the Imperium. You brought me a gift, Russ? What is this? The Emperor asked with genuine interest. There are several things. I found them all inside that small ship. A battlesuit, weapons, a combat power detector, and the most precious thing of all, the ship itself, Russ said. Oh, you think these are very valuable? Yes, Father, these items are extremely priceless, countless times more valuable than your flagship, Russ declared. Horus snorted softly at that. Even the Custodes shifted their stances with restrained amusement. The Space Wolves who had accompanied Russ exchanged looks of helplessness. But the Emperor only laughed. Is that so? He said. Show them to me, my son. If what you brought truly surpasses my flagship, then I will grant you a worthy reward. Russ had been waiting for that bait. Although he had been raised on a savage world, it would be a mistake to think him a mere brute. He was sharp. He smiled broadly. You are generous, Father. I expect my reward will be deserved. I brought several priceless things. First is this combat power detector. It can accurately measure the combat potential of any being. Russ removed a small eyepiece he had been wearing over one eye and handed it to the Emperor. The Emperor placed the device to his eye and pressed a side button. A series of beeps sounded, and a string of numbers and readings appeared before him. Space Marines, the Custodes nearby, Leman Russ himself, even Horus. You let Russ test it on my Custodes, did you? The Emperor asked. Exactly. I wanted to know the strength of these golden-armored warriors, Russ replied. The Emperor ran several checks with the instrument, even testing a few psychers aboard the ship. When the psychers were not channeling, their readings were low, under 10, but the moment they reached into the warp, the readings climbed dramatically. The power of psychers could be staggering. Some powerful psychers could, the device suggested, fell a dozen Space Marines if left unchecked, their combat values rising into the hundreds or even thousands. The Emperor declined to have his own power read. His strength far surpassed a Gene Seed Primarch's, and unleashing even a portion of his psychic might could destroy the delicate gadget. By his estimate, the device was probably only capable of measuring up to roughly 23,000 units of combat power. Beyond that, the internal chip would overload and likely explode. This is very practical, the Emperor said, approvingly. This lens could be fitted into the visors of Space Marines. It detects not only physical strength, but energy signatures as well. Though energy signatures must be actively stimulated to be detected, it can also pick up surrounding life forms. He considered the implications. Such a device would allow Space Marines to gauge opponents and to locate high-energy entities during searches. He planned to hand it over to the Mars Mechanicum for thorough study and eventual integration into Marine gear. That is only the least of it, Russ said, and produced an energy pistol. This is an energy weapon. Who would like to try it? He looked directly at the Emperor's custodes.